First, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Nace DeSanders. I am a filmmaker, but I also work with Soleil Space, which is a streaming platform for short films for filmmakers of color. And I work with the Queer Women of Arts Media Project in San Francisco as well. Just a lot of different projects that are helping female filmmakers, queer filmmakers, and filmmakers of color. But over to my wonderful panelists. First, all the way at the end there, we have Carolyn Morissette, who is a Genre Fest programmer for the last 15 years. That's not a short period of time. So a wealth of knowledge. Spade Robinson, who is a screenwriting consultant and teacher for the past also 15 years. And right next to me here, Melody Cooper, who is a TV and film staff writer, director, producer, going on 20 years now, but in Hollywood for the past 5 years. So in addition to that, they are all filmmakers and film entrepreneurs in different ways. So just a wealth of knowledge here. But I would love for each of you to introduce yourselves as well and really get into that to tell them all the different ways that you are super knowledgeable about this industry, about horror, and we're all obviously Black women.
Oh, okay. I'm a film programmer at Fantasia International Film Festival, which is in Montreal, Canada. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. And I was actually named after Carolyn Stoddard from Dark Shadows. If anybody remembers that soap opera, so right out of the womb, right into the horror space. I was a film critic, a film writer. I've been published in Encyclopedia of Japanese Horror, and I also ran a development lab for underrepresented filmmakers for 4 years, and I'm actually doing a more expansive lab as well. I think that's about it. Yeah.
Do I turn it? Okay. Here we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Spade Robinson, and I'm first and foremost a filmmaker. I'm a writer and director, and I love genre. I love things that are scary, so that is where my films tend to lie. I'm also a professor. I teach at the University of Arkansas and Belmont University, teaching screenwriting and filmmaking and film business, which we're going to get into today because that's extremely important. I'm the screenwriting director for the Athena Film Lab, and I'm also a story consultant. So I work one-on-one with screenwriters to help them get to the most compelling version of their story. And I also work with nonprofit organizations, Sundance Film Independent, et cetera, and for-profit studios, HBO, Disney, organizations and companies that hire and support filmmakers to help both sides of the aisle sort of understand what each other needs and to prepare filmmakers for being more hireable.
And I'm Melody Cooper. I am a storyteller across a lot of different things from TV, film. I write comic books as well, short stories, usually horror and sci-fi. Those are both the things I write. I started out as a professional actor in New York and then started writing plays. My first play was about Rwanda and about children who haunted an NGO worker. So hauntings and horror have kind of figured into my work. I did the Sundance Episodic Lab and got into the HBO writing program with horror scripts. And I founded a group called Nyx Horror Collective. It's NYX, the Queen of the Night, Nyx, and it's for women horror filmmakers. We produced a short film program that was on Shudder called 13 Minutes of Horror. We did that for 2 years, and so these women got to see their work. And my first staffing job was on 2 Sentence Horror Stories, which was a CW anthology horror show.
Amazing. So the first thing I want to get into is the title of this panel. It's called Black Women in Horror, a Perspective on the Present and Future. So with time, we're missing something. We're missing the past. And that is intentional because I think we're very aware that there isn't much past for Black women in horror. It's pretty short history, unfortunately, especially if we're talking about the United States and like the Western Hemisphere, which we're all from here, so we are. And I just didn't think that would be helpful. I think there's a lot, no, I know there's a lot of Black women that want to work in genre and that want to be in this industry, and talking about a few like on-screen examples from the past just isn't helpful for that. You can go home and watch those movies on your own. So what I wanted to talk about is exactly what's going on in the industry today, because that's relevant to all of us, and what's going to be happening in the industry in the future and how we can affect that future, because it's our future, because that's just so much more important, right? Thanks, girl. So with that, let's hop into our first question. Again, dealing with the title, right? So why Black women in horror? What reason is there to have us in this space?
Well, I'm gonna jump in, and I've been seeing a lot on the social media and just like, with the whole political climate and how we're just kind of, Black women are just kind of sitting back and observing, and we've kind of had enough, and I feel like a lot of horror can come from that, a lot of our experiences and what we've observed, a lot of kind of microaggressions, that actually is horrific, like even from the workspace, toxic workplaces. And I can see so many horror stories coming out of that, where it's not like your typical stereotypical trauma. It's stuff that we've actually experienced, like the terrible coworker or the terrible boss, or and we're seeing that actually coming out now. So I feel like that's what we're the storytelling we've got coming and brewing.
I would agree with that. My feature film, Late Bloomers, is a film that I've been pitching for a while, and it's been difficult to get it made. And part of the reason is that people don't always understand what's scary about it. So it's about 2 Black women going on a road trip through the American South. It sounds terrifying. People are like, I don't know how it's scary. Have you been to a gas station at night? It's terrifying. I will never fill up my gas. Why would I ever do that? So I think, to answer your question, I think that there is a space where we can talk about our everyday experiences as living a life that is horror almost every day in these tiny ways. And I think that Black women have such a style and finesse when it comes to horror and aesthetics that it's time for us to be a part of the general conversation and make known what it feels like to be in our experiences.
Yeah, and I think it depends on how you think of it. Is it Black women in horror? Is it our story? Or are we the storytellers? Because there's 2 parts to that. Because we can tell any story, it's from our perspective, and so that's a Black woman's horror story. On 2 Sentence Horror Stories, I had 2 episodes. One was about, it was called A Beji, about these 2 sisters, Black sisters, where they dealt with medical inequity, because I write a lot of social-driven dramas and horror, and I wanted to deal with how many Black women are facing that, and I did it through horror. And the other one was about an Amazon-like company called Quota that locked the workers inside to meet a quota. And then there was like a zombie outbreak, and these 2 Black women have to figure out what to do. And I love the fact that I didn't set out to write only about Black women, but I wanted to give Black women a voice and say, well, what would happen if Black women were put in a zombie situation and they had to figure it out? And there was like class issues between them as well, to find the nuances and the complexity, not just, because we have a range of experience. And then the other answer to that is just that right now I'm working in a program called Ryback Rise, and I'm working on a sci-fi horror story that's about a man and his son. And they're of different races. One is Hawaiian and his son is Black. And I am a Black woman telling the story. And so I wanted to really lean into the fact that I have a perspective on men, on sons. I've been a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, and that's valuable for us to bring to the world, how we see the world.
Absolutely, very well said. I want to skip ahead to another one of my questions because we've started to touch on it a bit, so I want to explore that further. Are there specific themes or stories from Black women's culture and perspective that you feel are underexplored and have potential to make significant impact? Take notes, y'all.
Yes. 1000%. I thought about this as you were talking. Black women know everybody better than they know themselves. Because we have to navigate through these spaces and understand whiteness, understand maleness, understand queerness, understand straightness. We have to understand all of these places and institutions that we're not a part of so that we can be safe and survive them. Whereas people from these demographics don't have to know themselves as well because they don't have to survive it. And so when it comes to what we can be talking about, what we should be talking about, what we should be allowed to be talking about is experiences and stories from our perspective towards the rest of the world because we understand the rest of the world in a very specific, keen way.
I would love to see a coming-of-age story, a Black girl coming-of-age story with a horror bent, a psychological thriller bent, because just as a film programmer, and I also worked in distribution for a little while, and you see all these films, and they all have kind of the same story arc, and there's a really charming film about a kid moving to a trailer park, and she becomes friends with a surfer, and she wants to surf, and I'm like, well, there's all kinds of surfers. There's actually a documentary on South Asian girls surfing, right? And the trials and tribulations they have because of their culture. I want to see a Black girl surfer who has to deal with some sort of like a sea monster. Like, I know this wasn't a Black woman filmmaker, but one of my favorite films is Sweetheart by J.G.
I just saw that.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Such a good movie and such a random story. And this woman has to, well, I don't want to spoil it, but you have to check it out. But it's such a great film. And within that, you see her issues with microaggressions and her being a Black woman in like white spaces. I want to see stuff like that. Because again, as a film programmer, and no shade to like the bro culture, but I see a lot of bro horror movies, and some of them are really good and some of them aren't. But I just need to see more Black women driven stories and more Black women directed stories.
And I love Sweetheart. And I love because there is a complexity, and it's always for me complexity and nuance, and that I want to see us survive.
Yes.
I don't need to see torture porn. I don't need to see the stories where we're always the victims being killed, the first killed. That's been talked about a lot, but especially for Black women, I don't need us to be the magical negress. Looking after other characters, whether it's other Black characters or white characters, I want to see us have agency, and it's like Afrofuturism. I want to see the solutions, and I want to see us survive.
Can I add one more thing to that? And this is across all genres, definitely in horror. I never get to see the tenderness of Black women on screen. So I don't know how many writers are in the room, but there is a softness to our experience. There's a tenderness to our experience. And there is a childhood experience where like Black girls aren't allowed to be like little girls and innocent and in need of protection and people wanting to protect that innocence. I think seeing that on screen would be revolutionary.
And I'll just add along with that, love. Just, sex, intimacy, passion, because sometimes I think, especially in horror, it's like Ganja and Hess is like the movie where you see it, but like we don't see enough of it. So
Great points.
Yeah, it's true.
So a quick question, actually, that I want to ask the audience now, because Spade, when you said that, it made me think of it. By a show of hands, how many of us are writers in the room? Yeah, all right. How many of us are directors? Okay, all right. How many of us are producers? Very nice. How many of us are financiers? Hey, look at us. You're getting swamped after this. All righty, very nice. I love to see it. All righty. So then diving back into our questions here for our lovely panelists. what are some challenges to Black women's involvement in the industry, and how can or should they be overcome?
Wow. As a festival programmer, I run my own section. So I run the Canadian English programming because the festival I work for is in Quebec. So they have a separation with the French-speaking films, and I do the English. And I have to shout out my boss, Mitch Davis at Fantasia. He is fantastic. He is a true ally. And often, like, he'll have to be like, talk to Carolyn about this film, because they'll often go to him because he's been with the, understandably, he's been with the festival for decades. And so they'll go to him because they know him. But now I'm heading this section. So I always, like, I don't doubt myself, but I'm like, I know you're going to him because he's the easiest route, but I'm actually running this section now. And it's gotten better. But I'm just finding, like, just being in the room sometimes isn't enough, you know, and just kind of garnering that respect. Luckily, I've knock wood, I've come across like a lot of really wonderful people in the space, because within Canada, and I'm hoping this isn't, I hope that I'm wrong, but in Canada, I feel like I'm one of the maybe few or only women, Black women in genre. And it's a little lonely sometimes, you know, and I have wonderful allies. I have a really great community of women in horror, especially in Toronto. They're a wonderful bunch. But sometimes I'm just like, there's got to be more of me. There has to be more of me out there. And yeah, I feel like that's one of the challenges. It's just being in the room, being respected. Yeah, people like, I remember one time I was working at another festival I worked for a long time, and not to say anything about volunteers, because they're like the backbone of film festivals, but I put in so much work, and someone was like going, oh, you're just a volunteer or whatever. And I'm like, first of all, it's not just a volunteer. Volunteers are incredible. And second of all, I actually help program this goddamn festival. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's like the assumptions, because they don't think you have the power. And then when they come around and they go, oh, it was you. Yeah, it was me that programmed your film. So anyway, my little soapbox here.
Okay, so what are the barriers and what can be done? What should be done? I would say, in my experience, the barriers are mostly financial. There is a lot of programming support. There is a lot of community. But when it comes to, and there's a lot of, I was on the Women in Film Initiative when I worked at Sundance, and we did qualitative and quantitative research on what the barriers were before we did programming, because why do programming if you don't know what the barriers are? And we found that a big part of that is, like, women are entering film school at the same rate. There's the same amount of interest, obviously. We're getting into programs and labs and whatever. But when it comes to getting the job, when it comes to getting your budget, you know, that seems to be the main barrier. And I think what there is to be done is twofold, and this is just my hypothesis. One, I do think we need to become more entrepreneurial and supporting each other. I think that if we have been knocking against the same wall and that wall is not coming down, we need to group together and find financial products that grow funding and do our own film funds, because as someone who's been on the other side of artist support, I understand very keenly that when artists can't make movies, our voices are just missing from the field. And we end up going, there's nothing wrong with working at a bank or the post office or whatever, but we end up going into these different sectors because we literally cannot survive. And so when every time that happens, you know, every time a bell rings, an angel, you know, gets his wings, every time one of us is like, damn, all right, let me just go ahead and... Every time we do that, that voice, that story, that perspective is missing and may never come back. And so I do think that there are opportunities for us to gather together and figure out how to pool our money or find products that, you know, our investments or whatever we need to do to fund ourselves. And then I think the other side is being very transparent about the business we can do. I think there's an assumption a lot of times when it comes to our stories that they can't do good business, and that when we do good business, it's an anomaly, or that just because we have something significant to say, we don't understand the business. I study the market very hard. I know that this film can do good business. I understand all of the ingredients, and I don't think we're taken seriously in that way. And so I think the comeback to that is for us to educate ourselves on the market, understand the changes it's going through right now, and see the opportunities and support each other in that.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that, what you both said. And I think it's funding and it's creating the work regardless, finding a way. And things are changing, and it's difficult because we all know the climate that we're in right now. And so it's important to know that there are things in place, and there are people who are trying to bring community together to get the work made. And I've been lucky to be in this Ride Back Rise program where it's funded. And so we get paid to develop over a year a feature or a television project that they're moving forward to producing, and to get it in front of people, pitching it to buyers. And there are other programs like that. And I want to talk about the solutions that are out there that you can look to. There's a new project out of Harvard called the Harvard the Black Film Project. And they've just closed applications for this year, but it will open again next year. And it's a year-long funded, paid fellowship, so that of Black storytelling. And it's for, and this is important, it's for storytelling about Black characters. They are open and inclusive. They want to focus on Black storytellers, but if you are someone who's not Black, but you're telling an authentic, that's important, Black story, then they're welcoming you to the table. The Ride Back Rise program funds a short film. They pay for it, so I'll be directing a short film that they fund. There are companies like Macro that have internships, paid internships. So there are ways in which we're beginning to help each other in ways that include money. Because I just did the Ryan Murphy Half Initiative, which is a directing program, and you get to shadow. And they give you a little bit of money, but if you want to make a film, you need money. And so it's, yes, and I've been very lucky to, last night I won an Athena Film Festival award, and part of it was Disney. And it was for a feature film, and Disney provided a development grant with that. And again, the woman who runs Athena said, we need to give women filmmakers money. We need to give Black filmmakers money. It's the nature of the business. It's the way it gets made. We can volunteer for each other, but I'm gonna be serious. When I make a short film, I pay everybody something, because we should be paid for our work. We should not be working for free. No.
It's not sustainable.
Can I add something to this? A very strange thing that happened to me on my way. So I flew from Toronto to Atlanta, and then Atlanta to Austin. And on my Toronto to Atlanta leg, I sat next to a woman, and her name was Caroline. It's weird. And she was a global economics professor at U of T, which is University of Toronto, the biggest university in Toronto. And she was saying, like, we just got to talking or ranting on the plane, and she was saying exactly what you were saying about finding ways to fund our own projects and to create our own economy, because capitalism is not opening any doors for us, and we have to kind of work into capitalism and make it work for us. And also, like, as you were saying, like these labs, I ran a lab for 4 years where we brought LGBTQ filmmakers, disabled filmmakers, BIPOC filmmakers, and we put them in front of producers. They learned about the legalities. They learned about insurance. A lot of people were like, I need insurance on a set. It's like, yeah, you do actually. And, and that also takes money. So we were teaching them how to navigate the film industry. And I'm actually expanding that, but I'll talk about that later. But yeah, what you said about creating our own kind of economy, I feel like there's a revolution coming. But
it's happening.
yeah.
And I'm going to add to that there's been something for direct. I don't know how many of you said you were directors in the audience. All right, there's a thing where you end up shadowing, right? And I loved shadowing on the Ryan Murphy world because that was so much fun. I learned so much. But there were people in that program who it's their 11th time shadowing in some kind of program, and they need a job. They need to be hired. They know what they're doing. And so that's a way sometimes of kind of siloing us into a corner. It's like, oh, we're letting you come onto our set, and yeah, but you need to hire me and pay me, and so I can get the experience of what it's like to actually direct on a show. And so that's also a new movement too, that Ryan Murphy program actually is looking for episodes for all the women who went through it for us to direct. I'm hoping that I get to direct horror.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's a wonderful segue into my next question. In many industries, not just film, Black women are often over-mentored and underemployed. What is at play in the film industry making this a reality for so many Black women?
Think about this one. Yeah, go.
This is a safe space, right?
Cone of silence. Cone of silence.
So I come from the nonprofit artist support world, and there is a lot of earnest goodwill when it comes to diversity and support. There is not enough of that is well funded. And I think that if I look at what I've seen over time, is that people feel really, really good about the initiatives and the programs and the fellowships and all that. We feel really good about that, and we can like give these small grants, and stuff like that. But I don't think that there's actually been heavy investment. And I don't think that there's been a desire to take the risk and even experiment with the risk, and even in a controlled way. Now, I think what Macro is doing is incredible, and I think they're an example of like what good business these projects can do. But it's interesting because we can get into the whole controversy of like, are you a filmmaker? Are you a Black filmmaker? I'm very agnostic about that. But I do think that there is this feeling of if it's going to be a Black filmmaker or a woman filmmaker or whatever, there has to be a lesson to be learned. There has to be a movie that's medicine. And I'm doing such a good thing by supporting it or going to see it or whatever. When it comes to these projects being a part of the wider pool of films and being thought of that way, being financed that way, being treated that way, being pitched that way, being understood that way. We were having a conversation last night. I'm not anti any type of film, not even the bro film or whatever that is. But I do think that there's certain risk being taken. There's a way that we see male genius that we don't see female genius, or we don't see Black female genius. And so you're like, oh, you have to see it. It's so special. It's so interesting. When I've seen that story. I've seen that story 12 times, and I know it's really tender, and the first time this white boy fell in love is really important. But like, there's such a wide range of ways that I think we could be making heavier investments and risk-taking, even not to do anybody a favor, but for the sake of trying to see where film can go, and what we can create in this art form, pushing the boundaries of this art form. I think we can do something really special, and I think we can make a shit ton of money doing it too. And so I think that's been my experience.
I was just going to say too it's hard because the siloing of us, like after George Floyd, if you remember, a lot of the streamers, they had the black movies. So we got ghettoized into these, and so people could avoid us if they wanted to, or seek us, but also avoid us. And it's hard because you want to support, and you want to, but at the same time, like Onyx is, I just pitched to Onyx, and Onyx is the black division of Hulu. And it's a wonderful place that we can have our stories told, but it's this siloing of us as being, I am a filmmaker, I am a writer. We're filmmakers and writers and creatives who are doing a great job just by being that. And so when we silo ourselves off, I worry that it's a way of saying, this is a black filmmaker, we're going to put them in that box, and we're not going to include them in general with the rest of filmmakers to say this is a filmmaker should be elevated for the work that they do regardless. And so that's a hard thing, but we still need the spaces and the support because we're not getting enough of it. So it's a double-edged sword, it really is. But I just wanted to take a really, really quick little moment to because we're talking about, I just want to shout out women that I know that some of you might know, but you should know of, because I know some of you know Nia DaCosta from Candyman. But Nekiatu Husu, I believe is how you pronounce her name, Jusuf, who directed Nanny. Tanya Pinkins did Red Pill. Cassie Lemons, of course, Eve's Bayou. Mariama Diallo, who did Master. Tiana Reeve Dew who's a horror writer, is a good friend of mine, and she's made some short films. Ellie Fumbi, if you don't know her film, Our Father the Devil. This is an extraordinary film. It's psychological horror. Elsie Cruel, Eunice Levis, who I produced her short film. Sandashe Brown, Shania Williams, Monica Suriage. And these are names that you don't hear, we need to hear more of. And what happens to black women who make horror is that we get relegated to short films. Yes. And we need features. Nia can't be the only one, So anyway.
I just wanted, because I was actually going to use Nia DaCosta as an example. So everybody went nuts when she did the Candyman remake. Yes. And it's like, and then they slammed her for Marvel, right? She did, is it the Marvels movie? Yeah. They slammed her for Marvels, and it's they're perfectly good movies, but why can't we just make perfectly good movies? Why does it have to be some sort of, incredible, moving, trauma-based, film message, and we have to telegraph this thing that we are these noble blacks, and and tell the story. And yes, there's room for that, and I think it's very important. But it just, when you were talking, it was making me think, because I have run a lab that I co-created for 4 years, and you have to walk a fine line when you're introducing underrepresented people, BIPOC people, to the larger industry, because you don't want them to meet someone and they're like, yeah, a producer, a white producer going, oh, I met with this, this Iranian filmmaker and I feel really good about it. And, I met with this black queer filmmaker and I feel really good about it. And then not do anything about it. And actually, I made a point of, people got invited, producers, whoever, they met with the people. If I didn't see any movement, you're not coming back. I'm sorry, you're not coming back to meet people that we have handpicked. We had a jury pick to come, and because they're talented and they have a great story, and you're just gonna come and feel good. You need to do something about it. And actually, we have, there's I think there's about 4 films over the last 4 years that actually are in production or are in post. And that's because they met with people who are true allies. So there's that, right? And it's a very small lab. And now I'm trying to expand it with my business partner. Again, talk about that a little bit later. But it's a very fine line, because you don't want people to just show up and go, I feel great. I met with all these, black and brown people, and it's so excellent now. And now they can go off and finance whatever films that seem more profitable. It's a frustration. But we are making kind of headway and baby steps, but I will not. I'm like, you got to show me that you mean it and that you're going to actually help these people make a film, so. And a feature film, not a short. Get out of here with that. Yeah, no, like you made like 8 short films and you want to make a feature, like, yeah.
There is a lot of talk in this industry in so many different ways. I do have a quick anecdote of a program I was a part of that I will not say the name of, where we had a number of executives come in, listen to our pitches, and give us feedback. And this was a group of all women, mostly of color. And something they would say a lot to us is, dang, people really need to hire you. These are great. I'm like, you hire us. What are you talking about? Right? But there is this kind of cognitive dissonance of like, oh, what is this? It's a huge, wide problem that no one can do anything about. Like, oh, dang, I really wish people would help you make your films. Not me, but like, good luck.
Somebody.
Yeah, somebody, not me, right? So if there's anything to take, I mean, there's a lot of takeaways from this, and we got more questions. But know that you as an individual can and should do something. This isn't this giant, wide macro problem that only the gods can phase, right? We have power. There's stuff we can do. Everyone in this room, okay?
It's like traffic. Everybody's like, oh, I hate being in traffic. You are traffic. You're
Zipper,
in it.
merge. All right. So, what advice do you give the filmmaker who is getting into these mentorship programs, but getting passed over for grants, labs, or any like substantial help?
Okay, I'm gonna go. Be persistent. You meet these people, and I remember the very first lab we ran. There was a young woman who she felt like she wasn't ready, and she wouldn't take any meetings or anything. And I felt for her because there's probably like this imposter syndrome, and I don't have a project that's good enough. But it's like, look, just follow up. Take the names, follow up, be persistent with these production companies, and make sure that they're a good match for you. Yeah. That, because sometimes you're like, I'm just going to go with this person, but they could like be the worst possible match for you. And if they're not a good match, then just do your research. Collect the cards. I know people are like, oh, I have like 8 million cards in my bag. Collect the cards, do your research, because it's very important to make sure that they align with you, that they're not like assholes, just simple, like if you're an asshole, if they're like looking at other things while you're talking to them. I just had I had an investor mentorship meeting, and the guy was kind of like looking around and talking really fast, and I'm like, well, I'm out of here, like it's just, that they're not really aligned with you. So yeah, I would say do your research. And when you come out of the lab, sometimes it can be very overwhelming. And you have say roundtable meetings and speed dating with people, and you really do have to sit with your film team, like your producer or your writer, and just figure out your strategy, because sometimes you come out feeling like, oh my God, I'm on top of the world and I've got all this information. But it can be overwhelming even if it's a good experience. So you have to sit down and put all your ducks in a row and make sure that you can actually do the thing. And funding sucks. Let me just say, applying for funding sucks. It's just terrible. But yeah, again, be persistent. Don't let those applications deter you, because they're made to kind of weed people out. So make sure if you can talk to people who have filled out that application before you, and create a community as well. Create a community. Give each other information, because that's the only way we'll be able to get films from our communities, is to build community. Sorry, there we go.
Okay, I'm gonna talk to y'all like I talk to my students. The major thing to do is to understand where you are in your career right now. That is so key, because I think we apply to a lot of stuff, but the program is not meant to program where you are right now. So the self-awareness to understand where you are in your career and what kind of support you actually need where you are right now. So once you have that, then you can, ad nauseum programming, this grant, there's a lot, right? So then you can sort of weed through that and understand, okay, that's not for me, that's not for me. Because I think sometimes we think I want to as much as possible, but A, it's exhausting, B, it can be expensive, and C, it can be very demoralizing when you get no, 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 right? But if you understand you are past the, sort of place where you need a certain kind of mentor, but you need a specific kind of fellowship that has like a job attached to it or like something like that, then that should be what you're looking for. Or there's programming that's meant to build your script and help with development, but maybe you're past that and really you don't need to be applying to a lab. You need to be applying to screenwriting contests, right? Because you're at a place where you need to be in the trades and you need to have some press about your screenplay. So I think knowing where you are, B, knowing what program has the kind of programming to address your issue, because I end up being on the interview side a lot of times, interviewing screenwriters, and what I'm listening for is, do I have the lab that's going to fix your problem, right? So if you tell me, well, what I really need right now is like, I think we're done, and I'm really looking for a producer and to make industry connections, I'm like, okay, we're not going to be able to help her because I don't have that kind of lab, So I think that's key. And then I think the next thing has to do with networking effectively as opposed to like networking generally. When you have a really, really keen, very crystal clear concept of what job you want in the industry and then how that person gets hired, then I think you can follow the money and figure out best how to network and save some time.
And I would add to that there are going to be a lot of no's in this industry. Don't let yourself be the one who tells you no. Step into your power. I have a story. I applied to the HBO writing program in 2019, and I had a horror script, and they had done True Blood, but they didn't really do horror. They base a lot of their shows on IP. And I'm sitting there, the application is due at 11:59, it's 11:49, and I'm like, they are not gonna take this. It's my first script, TV script. And I said, you know what, this is my best writing. I know I'm just gonna send it, fuck it, I'm just doing it. And I sent it, and it was the best decision that I made because that program was excellent. I got my first job out of it. In the middle of the program, I got staffed. And in my opinion, the programs that either give you a grant or have a job attached to it, those are the ones you should be looking at. The mentorship is good too, because Craig Mazin was my mentor in the HBO program. And Cheo Hodari Coker was my mentor in Sundance. So those people have vouched for me for jobs and for other projects. So the networking through those that mentorship is important, and you've got to believe in yourself and you've got to follow through. And if there's meetings that you can take, that's a win. Even if you're not perfect for it, you're getting to meet someone. And I can't tell you how many things I've gotten because I'm working with Reggie Hudlin right now because I took a meeting with him and he liked it and he said, let me read you. And he said, oh, we've got to work together. And it's taken 3 years, but and that's how it happens. See, every little moment is an opportunity and really step into your power.
Wonderfully said. So, kind of piggybacking off of this a little bit, how can up-and-coming Black women writers, directors, actors, producers, anything really, support one another to ensure a diverse future for horror?
Work together. Work together. Just work on each other's films. If you see someone's film, it is supported on social media. Go see it in the theater. Bring your friends. Make sure you buy tickets because we need to financially support each other in that way too. Build an audience because that's what producers are going to see and financiers. They're going to say, "There's an audience for this. There's a following for this." We should be creating that community for ourselves. And I'll say that in the program I'm in with the Right Back Rise, what I love about it, it's eclectic. We've got several Asian writers, we've got several Black writers, we've got trans, we've got Latina. It's just this, it's like it really is like a village, and we are all supportive of each other. It's very collaborative. and we lean into supporting the Asianness of the story of the Vietnamese twins who want to tell that story. But I don't have to be Asian to be supportive of that. So I find that to be much very, very enlightening, because I'm learning something. Because as a Black writer, I'm writing about a Hawaiian. I've spent time in Hawaii, and I had a writer's residency there, but I'm not Hawaiian. But I bet, and for any of you in here who have Black characters in your stories, or want to tell a story that has a large Black component, you better do a pass by some Black people, okay? You need to make sure it's authentic. And I am not a believer where you can't write about something if you're not that group. I think there is something to be said for, if a group hasn't had a chance to tell their stories, that we need to really promote those writers having a chance. But it doesn't mean that I can't write any characters that are outside of who I am. But I just have to do that authenticity check. I need to run my script by someone who's Hawaiian. And I think it's important for any of you who are writing outside of your group to make sure you do that.
Can I say something mushy? I think that this is it's a marathon, not a sprint. It is a lifestyle. It is a life of being vulnerable. It is a life of pitching. It is a life of leveraging your dignity to express yourself. It's a lifestyle of this kind of putting down your power, picking it up, all of that. And I think we need safe spaces to be vulnerable. We need safe spaces to tell our friends, like, here's actually what's wrong with your script. We need safe spaces to have camaraderie, and I think we need the kind of community where we can fail, because we're not allowed to really fail up in the bigger Hollywood system. And so we need spaces with each other where we can fail and still find community with each other. I think a lot of times when we we're networking and looking around, we're looking for who can help us, right? Like who can help me where I'm going. But that's kind of like wanting to have a wife but not wanting to be a husband. I think we also need to learn how to be really good friends with each other. I need to know that I can call somebody and be like, I don't know what to do, and there's a safe space to do that.
Yeah, I just listening to you all talk, it just makes me think about how Nace, Spade, and myself, how we met in Berlin, right? At a dinner, and then we kind of just stayed in contact, and then now we're up, all of us are up here, and I get to meet Melody, and it's just, it's just really great. We're just so open to each other. And my favorite thing about growing community is if I can help you, I will. If I know somebody who I think would be a good fit to help you with something, I don't know, even if you just want to bounce an idea off of someone, I'm always down to connect people. I connected Nace to someone this earlier today. I just, and she's a woman, and I feel very strongly about connecting women in general, and in particular, Black women, because as we do need to support each other. We do need to be soft with each other, and we need to be just kind in general. I'm always for that. I was always told, Carolyn, you're too nice. And I'm like, well, sorry, I just like to be nice to people. You want me to punch you in the face? You know what I mean? It's just be nice to each other. And if somebody's a dick, then, don't give them your niceness. That's not good. Save it for somebody who deserves it, right? But yeah, I don't know. I just creating spaces and community. And I love seeing when I go to a film festival and seeing Black women out there, because that's another component. Is that I don't see a lot of Black women at film festivals. And I don't know if it's because we don't feel safe or we don't feel like we're wanted in these spaces. But I used to go to horror film festivals by myself, because my sister, she's like, she likes horror, but she's not going to come with me. I didn't have most of my friends didn't like horror. So I just went by myself, and I would just chit chat with people. I'm the person in the lineup that asks you about your shoes. I'm You know, I can't shut up. So, you know, I just talk to people. And yeah, I just would like to see more Black women at film festivals and taking up space. And I feel like that's what we need to do. Don't be afraid to go out. I know we have to like gauge as women safe spaces and that sort of thing, but just take up space, I think. Just go to something that you're afraid to go to and do it. And then you'd be like, I did that thing, you know? Because I'm afraid of everything. And I'm up here, right? So I don't know. I just encourage Black women out there, Black women filmmakers, just approach people. And if they say no to you, they say no, you know? So yeah, just try things.
Oh, I was going to say one small concrete thing. So this life is very expensive, like going to festivals and going to markets and like stuff like that. So one thing Black women can really do to support each other is like if we're going to the same city, like let's share a hotel, like let's get an Uber together. Like I have a friend or a cousin or whatever, let me hook you up with her. My cousin will let you stay on her sofa. There's like all of these small ways that we can save and create opportunities by way of being able to afford to go to like markets and festivals and things like that to progress our careers.
Yeah, I was going to say that the Nace Horror Collective that I co-founded, we have a fellowship that some of you ladies should apply to. It's for women horror filmmakers, and it's a fellowship to Stowe Story Lab, so it's you don't have to pay for it. You can go to that lab and be with mentors and work on your script and learn about pitching. But there was something else you were getting to that I just wanted to add to, the idea that we are honest with each other, and that it is, I mean, the kindness I think is we have to, but part of that kindness is that tough love. And so if there is something that is not working or something that needs, we can't be so afraid that's like, oh no, I'm not supporting a Black filmmaker if I say anything negative. We cannot do that because we're not going to grow as filmmakers unless we're able to be, you know, critical in a constructive way, not to tear each other down because we don't need to do that, but we have to be professional and we have to have that critical eye.
One thing I would love to add to that is that we also need to be able to receive that. And this is not something specific to Black women at all. This is all people. But if you are the person that says, please give me feedback, and they're like, well, I didn't love this, and you freak out, you will never get real feedback ever, and you will never improve. So you got to go into it going, say whatever you got to say. I'm still going to love you after this. Please just tell me what I need to know. And then ideally, you get back some good constructive feedback, right? So I'm going to request short answers to this next one. The answers have been wonderful, but I want there to be a little bit of time for audience questions because I know people got some good questions in the audience. So what changes would you like to see in the horror genre over the next decade regarding the inclusion of Black women?
I'm just going to say we should be directing features. We've said it already, but that's what I want to say.
Yep.
And writing. Yes. And playing the lead roles and the supporting roles. Not just one role, not just the dot.
I'm going to say more financing and development. I'm having way too many conversations. That sounds amazing. Call me when it's done. How's it going to get done? So financing and development, I think, is something I would like to see more in this space.
I second that. I'm kind of I'm facilitating that, but I want to see real results. I want to see like, okay, yeah, they just gave me 25 grand scene money or something. You know, like I agree with that. And I just think the executives, I would love to see more Black women executives in film as well, because it's ridiculous. Like, come on.
And that they don't get fired.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Well,
Absolutely. So, quick shout out for you guys. What are some of your proudest contributions to the genre, and what are you working on now?
Well, I think I'm doing a lot of things. I do a lot of things. I'm a bit of a hustler, but I've been published in a couple of encyclopedias. One is an encyclopedia of racism in American film, encyclopedia of Japanese horror films. What else? Oh yeah, I'm a commentator on a documentary series in Canada called A Year in Film, and it's so much fun. We just talk about films and just how we relate to them. Also creating a new accelerator called Access Threshold with my business partner, Kata Edwards-Pierre, and we are expanding the lab that I co-created for 4 years. And we're doing like 3 streams, so stay tuned for that. Very excited about it. We're looking for some seed funding as well, because as you were talking about, like, we need to have money to like compensate filmmakers. So yeah.
So what I'm working on right now is a feature called Late Bloomers. It's a horror feature, and we're in the financing stage, packaging. I think my biggest contribution to horror film and film overall is just teaching people that being able to work one-on-one with screenwriters or students, and trying to empower the next generation of filmmakers to make their very best work is probably my biggest accomplishment.
And for me, it's that I've been able to produce women and our first winner of a fellowship was a Black woman, to see their horror work on Shudder. I myself, I'm working on several different projects in development. I sold a show to Netflix with Will Packer. That's a supernatural show about an immortal Black family, and we'll see if they make it. I'm working on the Reggie Hundlin story, is a supernatural series that Kat Graham is attached to, and we've been pitching that out to various companies, so we're waiting to hear back. We just pitched last week. And I developed a horror show with Terrell McCraney and Sterling K. Brown. That one's true to my heart, and the one that's in that's the one that probably won't go. But you never know. Knock on wood. But it's always the one I love. I love them all, but that one in particular because they're such wonderful partners. And then in the Ride Back program, I'm writing a feature that's a sci-fi horror. So that's
Wonderful stuff. Alrighty, we've got a lovely long line. Go ahead. What is your question?
Yes, thank you so much, ladies. This is a panelist discussion I didn't know I needed. I'm with Austin Women Magazine, and I'm covering their film and movie here at the South by Southwest. But I'm also a neuroscientist. So I like to come from a neural perspective of how movies influences the mind and the emotions and the deeper nuances. What you have opened up for me in this conversation is, and I'm going to get to my question, is our memories of watching horror flicks with my father at a young age. I'm a Gen Xer, so the ratings were not what they should have been back then. But I always felt protected because he was there, even though, there were scary moments. And I stopped watching them after a time as an adult. But my question is for you, this is relevant. My question is, how do you define horror? Because there was a lot of what you said had to do with like storytelling, sharing our trauma, but also infusing love and having different perspectives from the Black woman experience. I'm doing my first documentary on a rare neurological condition that my mother has, and I'm partnering with Stanford. And with your conversation, I started thinking that it's kind of horrifying that my mother has this rare neurological condition, but it's not horrifying in a sense that now I get to tell her story in this journey of our family navigating this experience. So the question is, how would you broadly or, clearly or, pin down the genre of horror given what I just told you about the documentary and my insight?
That is the best question of my life.
Oh.
I'll start. I define it pretty broadly. I think if I were to define it for me, and I don't think that this is like a universal description, by any means, but I think it is cultivating an environment that thrills with fear. That's how I would define it.
There's I don't know if you've seen it, but there is an org chart of horror that breaks down all the subgenres, because sometimes we don't realize psychological horror is horror. There's the creature feature horror. There's zombie horror. There's all kinds of different ways, and as you begin to look at it, you realize, oh, this story. But I do think it's always about what is frightening, truly scary. And I also grew up, very young, watching movies I shouldn't have been watching at a very young age. In fact, most people that I know who are into horror started off being exposed to it very young. And so there's just a different way that we kind of process things and see the world, I think.
Yes.
And I don't know if that fits with what you've been studying, but it's almost like it activates something different within people. But some people don't know how to delineate between science fiction and horror. They get confused. They're very different things. But for me, as I say, like Alien and Aliens, that's sci-fi horror. That's a subgenre, because it scares the hell out of you. And that's like the defining for me.
Well, so I grew up with, my background's Caribbean, and also I was raised Catholic, so everything is terrifying. Everything. We watched The Exorcist. I swear I was like 11 years old. It was like a primer on how not to be, like the devil will possess you if you do this, whatever. But I would say, it's funny. I've been seeing a lot of submissions with dementia as the kind of the antagonist, and as people get older, like I feel like there's a lot of Gen X filmmakers, and they're seeing their parents deal with that. My boyfriend's father had dementia, and that's a real life horror. Like that's real terror, because you walk into a room, you don't know if this person's going to recognize you from hour to hour, not even day to day, hour to hour. Right. And so I think for me, all the genres of horror kind of are swirling, and they're kind of amorphous. But I think it really relates to the stage of your life as well, and what horror affects you in at that stage of your life. Like, when I was a kid, like I watched Godzilla, like, oh my God, Godzilla's gonna smash my house. And now, like, as you get older, you're like, oh my God, like what if that thing on my back is like, it grows, like what if I grow a tail or something, you know what I mean? Like everything, you're like become a hypochondriac as you get older. So everything is terrifying. But yeah, I think that's my answer.
And I think horror also allows us to Trojan horse certain issues and really get in. So if, like, let's say there's an issue that the story of your mother, a horror version of it might be more heightened, that has to deal with something that, maybe that was going on with the government wasn't giving, wasn't sending checks or something, and for Social Security or something like that. And then so usually horror heightens it. So it isn't always just what's happening right in front of us, but allows us to dig into to get into it in a way that isn't as direct. It's indirect.
So we only have time to take one more question, and short answers, please. Go for it.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't really have a true question. It's really a response to what you were saying about getting us out into these spaces and seeing more Black women in the spaces and how expensive it can be. I myself travel around and do festivals for work, like do seasonal work, and that's how we can get more into the spaces. And some of these festivals do provide housing and transportation and things like that. So I would proact people to look into these, because sometimes I am the only one at these festivals sometimes, and it would be nice to have more of us as a support at the festivals. And it's a great way to go around and meet people and network being in the filmmaking industry. And then secondly, I did want to say that I do have a friend that is a Black girl surfer, and she lives in Hawaii, and I've texted her about this panel to say, hey, connect with these women because they want to help you make your story. So I just wanted to say that. So that's all.
Hello. Sorry, I just want to
Oh,
ask,
mine is on.
how can we find you all if we wanted like your help or like to connect and stuff?
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take you.
Okay. You want to say?
I'm Melody on Instagram, Melody Cooper Film.
I'm on Instagram, Spade Inc. Media, and then I'm on TikTok teaching screenwriting and filmmaking at Atlanta Film Project.
I'm at CEMO, CEMO25 on Instagram.
And I'm at Nace DeSanders on everything, NACE, and my website's also nacedesanders.com. We have a really great room here of people who are like a bunch of Black women and people who care enough about Black women's stories and experiences to show up to a wonderful panel like this. And I would love to keep that going. So we are all going to Mai Tai down the street right now. So if anyone wants to join us and chat and ask more questions, please do come with. It's right next to Revolution Coffee. Yeah.
So you had everybody else plug, and as your sister, I need you to plug as well.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm shooting 2 feature films this year. One in July. Thank you. One in July that's fully funded, titled The Drunk of New York, a mockumentary, and one in October called Dance to the Demon that is looking for financing. So.
I've read it and it's amazing, and I'm a really hard critic.
Thank you all so much for being here. It was wonderful having you. Join us at Mai Tai, please.